Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Design and a Half. In today's episode we're going to be talking a little bit about students, and especially students in this day and age, and more so students in the age of the COVID-19 crisis. And the reason why I'm saying this and focusing on this subject is because lately there's been a lot of people that have started to take up self-learning classes. They have started to build new skills due to the fact that even some of them might have been laid off, some of them might have been furloughed, and they just want to take advantage of the situation to educate themselves so that whenever they enter back into the workforce or get back onto their normal jobs, they'll be able to hit the ground running. And additional to that, they will be able to have additional skills that could provide value either to the company they are working for, or they will probably, if they're looking for a new company, that will also help them find a new job quite fast, to be honest. Okay, so given the situation that we're currently in, let's think a little bit about how this differs from the normal studying person or the normal image of the person that studies that we have in our minds. So whenever we're talking about students, we classically remember the times that we went to school, had a teacher that told us about certain subjects. They just used the blackboard and had this classical feel about how education is supposed to work. And in some situations it still works like that, but more and more we're looking at a transition from the classical system of education to a new system of education that relies heavily on on self-learning, on autodidacts, and a lot of YouTube information. Basically, education, along with media, has been democratized ever since YouTube started up, and ever since online classes have started up, and ever since more and more tutors are thinking about switching from the classical education system where they are teaching in classes, instead switching over to virtual classes. And the reason for that is because, first of all, it's more convenient for them, in the sense that they don't necessarily have to rely on their presence within the class as a teacher, in the sense, and be sort of this commanding presence for other people inside the room, but rather just feel like themselves at home and try to do things at their own pace. Especially, this also gives the opportunity for people who are normally shyer and not as outgoing as others to also attempt being teachers, just because they might have information which is useful for others, but at the same time profit from the fact that there is no visible eye contact between the person that is doing the education and the pupil himself. And this also brings me to the other subject, the fact that students, for example, also feel safer because of this, just because this way, having less interaction with a professor, they might not feel as intimidated, and second of all, they can study at their own pace. So think about classical exams, classical online school, or not classical online schools, sorry, classical schools, where you would be going to classes and you would have to attend all of the classes in order to graduate. However, you would also have a job, and this would make things endlessly more complicated for you than it is right now, just because you can actually pause those online classes and say, okay, right now I'm just going to deal with my life, I'm just going to take care of my kids, I'm just going to take care of my wife, or whatever task I have at hand and I need to do. And after that, I'm just going to resume whatever I was trying to understand, whatever I was trying to learn. Now, In online classes, this is obviously easier. Additionally, there's also the benefit of being able to communicate with other people and try to find better solutions, for example, for homework, if you will. But in addition to that, it's also convenient for professors to add more lectures and more reading material for people to actually use and study at their own pace. This is a huge advantage, which is, from my perspective, going to trump excuse the pun, it's going to trump the classical education system in quite some time. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the classical education system has a lot of flaws, which are some of them are due to the fact that it's become sort of this huge institution. It's become too big for itself, and instead of actually providing value and education to new minds that are looking for knowledge, it's just creating sort of rigid structures for people to just follow rules and try to educate them into this mindset of following rules instead of educating them into a mindset of actually absorbing knowledge and thinking. And that's the reason why I believe that in the future online schools are going to develop even further, just because they are going to basically empower us as people to go to an online class and just say, I'm going to study this. I want to become a specialist in doing this or that. I know exactly what the path is that I want to take, and I'm just going to follow it straight to the point without having to go through this and this and that. Obviously, there's the downside of not having common or additional knowledge or knowledge that would be traditionally gained in schools, like universal knowledge. But obviously, there's only so much you can do with online classes. However, I think online classes, and especially online education as a whole, is probably going to be the future, just because of this whole pandemic situation, in addition to the fact that people just want to focus more on their passions and not have to go through a lot of outdated information into the academic field, where people tend to be a lot more stale and tend to be a lot more focused on the definition of perfect rather than having something done and shipped, which is also the main reason why for example, a lot of people like to say that in opposition to people who are working in production, people who are working in academia don't necessarily know so much about how stuff is being done, just in theory. But whenever there's going to be the difference of practice versus versus academic information, people who are going to practice and know how to actually solve a problem, whereas people know how to do it in theory, there's always going to favor the ones who actually know something, instead of the ones who just have a degree, for example. This is super popular right now, just because in IT, which is a sector I am working in, and for quite some time, by the way, I've never had a specific degree in UX, just like thousands of other UX designers out there who just became UX designers out of necessity and out of the sort of by working in the industry day by day and learning things just by hitting your head against the wall each and every time. This is the same with people who are self-learners. Like basically, there's no difference between me as a self-taught UX designer that's gone through practice, rather than just studying and going to a UX school, for example, or having UX classes that are classical. I've just gone and went through loops and loops of banging my head against several walls, figurative or otherwise. And found what the information that I would like to is missing, and sort of filled in that gap myself through time. And I think a lot of people are just discovering how easy it is to be a self-learner and be a person that actually uses the information you have at hand on the internet to empower yourself and to educate yourself to rise above your either your current situation. Because I have a lot of people who I know personally who just started to learn UX and UI as self-learners, but they are doing so via online classes just because they are more affordable than going to traditional UX schools or actually traditional schools by themselves. And this is one of the other drives that I think is going to make this whole movement of self-education even more powerful in the future. The fact that it's affordable. And the reason why I'm saying this is because education was never affordable for everyone. And I think doing this and democratizing education for absolutely everyone and allowing people to get access to good education, or at least decent education that could probably give you a job, is quite important in the near future, just because at how the market shapes itself right now. I mean, just looking at how things are going right now, they are not looking too rosy. Just look at the situation in Great Britain with both the COVID situation as well as the fact that they're going through the Brexit. This is going to hit Britain quite hard, in my honest opinion, and I think it's going to take them some time to recover from this. And this is actually going to open them up for example, to have people learn skills that were traditionally not learned in the latest times. For example, I know maybe some people would go into agriculture and so on and so forth, whereas lately there haven't been that many people who are keen about learning agricultural or actually any type of hands-on skill. And I think this is going to change for sure, just because they won't be able to rely so much on outside help, and especially on the labor force within Eastern Europe, as well as perhaps the Africas or Middle East and so on. This is going to change them, and I think it's going to be a good change for the most part. However, if we're going back at the discussion we had earlier about cost, I think it's quite important to say that cost is usually a huge factor in deciding education. And this is sort of what I was saying earlier, that by giving people access to so much free, not free because it's a lot of it is not free, but anyways, affordable education, we could have an actual shift in the paradigm and actually help people to develop themselves and develop skills that they previously didn't have, and especially become useful within the work field. Especially if we're thinking about the whole discussions that were had this year about inclusiveness, about the fact that some minorities have unfavorable conditions as opposed to others. And I think this discussion with self-education, or especially with online education that could be affordable, is one which is really interesting to have in the future, and it's one that's probably going to be dominating the whole education scene for a long time. Myself included, I'm also thinking of actually working within this field, if you will, because in a way, if you think about it, these podcasts that I'm making, they're free, but at the same time, they're trying to educate people and give them access to information that they wouldn't have probably had, just because it's so difficult sometimes to reach and get into positions where you actually could discuss with someone who has professional knowledge within the field, who's going to actually give you time to go through these things and these topics. And I think by giving some insight with regards to this, I'm helping people, or at least I hope I'm helping people educate themselves with regards to design as well as business and technology in itself, because all of these three things are sort of working together in this IT ecosystem as well as our lives as well. Because IT, whether we like it or not, or technology, whether we like it or not, is part of our daily lives. For me, this is weird just because, in a way, my wife is not the biggest believer in technology. So she's not the typical type of person who adheres to technology, and she's not really excited about it. However, lately I managed to bring her on board with this just because of showing her how much technology can actually simplify your life, and especially by automating certain things which you used to do by hand. It's just giving you more free time for yourself, and if you want to, just to focus on yourself, your kids, your house chores, whatever you gotta do. The point is, you don't have to work in a Sisyphean way. You just have to be smart about it, and this is one thing that she also noticed, and she is way less resistant about technology that she was before. She was really skeptical about it, but now she's more susceptible to it, and she's always receptive to new information, and especially to new input with regards to what could make your life easier and give you more time to spend with your kids rather than be around to do house chores and whatnot, And this is something which is probably going to shift around many households, if you ask me, and it's probably going to make people need for a specific technology education even more than they do now. And this is why all of these sort of YouTube influencers who are doing a lot of reviews on tech and so on, I think they're doing something that's close to evangelizing technology for the masses, but at the same time they're also educating the masses about the use of technology, sort of what it's good for. But this is exactly the sort of ethical point I also talked about in a earlier episode, about the fact that they also have a responsibility towards us and towards everybody else who's sort of like a potential buyer for that technology, to be able to not, or to at least try to hold in some of the bias they have by being influencers and by being people who are being paid to advertise a specific product, and try to be more open and try to analyze that product from a sort of objective way, not the subjective viewpoint they currently have with regards to the fact that they are getting products for free, because that should not be the main motivator for them to do reviews, rather than just be voices of good besides being paid to do what they do and what they love, because that's given, that's sort of okay. Okay, what else was there that I wanted to touch upon? See, this is weird because I'm usually writing outlines for each of these episodes, and usually sort of scripting them out, trying to jot down some ideas and try to remember those and just bring them up into the discussion when I'm recording this. But right now, this is just an episode that's 100% sort of done on the spot, without actually having absolutely no script, without having actually anything written down, but being in situations that are sort of close to my heart, and especially being in situations that are close to education itself. Why? Because lately I've been trying to get involved in a lot of conversations with regards to UX, more in LinkedIn, more on certain Facebook groups as well. And I'm trying to do this just because I'm trying to rattle my own cage with regards to certain informations, and I think it's just one of those moral obligations you have as a professional, to be able to rattle your own cage by discussing with other people, by sharing knowledge, and especially by having different opinions and debating those opinions with other people, to be able to see where your faults lie, as well as what you could probably improve within yourself as a professional. This is one of the biggest advices I could give to anyone, is to be humble with regards to what you know, because 90% of the cases you know like probably 15% about the information that's out there with regards to a certain subject. and there's continuously new information being added to the pool of sort of education for that specific field. So be humble with regards to your education, and be humble with regards to what you know. You'll never know exactly as much as you think you know. Even I think I know probably 10% of the information that's at hand. And even when I started this podcast, I had some huge doubts about myself and about the fact whether I should do this or not, just because I think there's considerably more people out there that have more to say about the subject than I do, but are probably not speaking out. And which was one of the reasons why I actually did this in the first place, because I thought to myself that I owe myself this to try out and see if I succeed or if I fail, if I have something to say, or if I don't, or if people listen to what I say, if it makes sense for them, if it helps them, or if I'm just blabbering, if it's just information that's not really useful for anyone. So that being said, by the way, please tell me and let me know whether or not this information is useful to you. I would really love to know and have your input with regards to this subject. And if you also have friends which are designers, share with them any link of my podcast, whether it's on Spotify, whether it's on YouTube, on Apple Podcast, or what have you. I would be glad to see more people engage, and I would be super glad to see people commenting about this, especially on the Facebook page, where I'm trying to put a lot of effort into adding new information that I'm curating on Medium or on various other websites that I'm browsing daily to gather sort of UX information, and especially design information as a whole. That being said, I do want to wish you a good night to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of the week, sort of a weekend, sorry, because it's not the rest of the week, it's just finished. And I hope to see you again on Monday for a new set of episodes for the upcoming week. Have a good one, guys, and have a good night. Bye bye.